Subcommittee? That work for everyone?
Yeah.
All right. So did everybody, Ken, Amy, did you get the email from Rebecca with the draft minutes on, or the minutes from the prior meeting?
I did.
And the draft minutes for this meeting? I just want to make sure that, Barry, are we recording this?
Yes, we are.
All right, so I think the best way to proceed is, as long as we're recording it, I can take care of the draft minutes for today's meeting, and we can just work with Rebecca to make sure she gets a copy of that, if that makes sense.
Sure.
A copy of the recording. So if we want to take a minute to look at the minutes from the last meeting on February 4th, I think that's going to be the first order of our business, to take a motion to approve those. And just let me know when you're all ready.
I'll make the motion.
I can second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Do either of you need any time to review them, or are you good?
I think I'm good.
All right, so I believe since this is a remote meeting, we'd have to take a roll call vote, even if it's to approve the minutes. And welcome, Megan.
Hi, I've been here a couple minutes, but
Sorry, I was looking at the minutes and I turned off the camera, so I didn't see you.
that's okay.
So I'll just go in, as Ken would say, Brady Bunch order. So I think I see Member Mills first.
Mills, yes.
Member Michalowski.
Michalowski, yes.
And Member Weeks.
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay, and I will vote yes. So the motion passes to approve the minutes. Now, the next order of business is to look at the superintendent evaluation during the COVID-19 outbreak FAQs. And Rebecca had disseminated the list of MASC FAQs, and I have not used this screen sharing session. So Barry, can I share this, or are you able to pull this up on a screen? So
I could, but you should be able to if you click on the when you get your mouse hovering and you have the three dots in the lower right corner.
Hang on a second.
It should say present now in the bottom.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's right next to that. Right. Present now.
Hang on. You're talking to a guy who works in technology all day. I don't see it.
Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, if you can.
All right, so can you see?
I can.
All right.
So I think the big thing, and this is certainly something I think we need to talk about as a committee, and we should definitely ask the superintendent for input here. So we had talked about the first component here being timing at the full school committee. And the concern I think that was brought up at full school committee is the fact that we typically have our evaluation process complete before the changeover of election and the body of the school committee. And with town meetings being postponed now, I believe till the tail end of June, I think the consensus that we had heard from the majority of the school committee at the last meeting was that it probably makes sense to continue the evaluation with having it complete before the end of June. And that way the risk is mitigated from either new members of the school committee having to complete an evaluation who weren't around, or just have time to evaluate based upon their time on the school committee. And it avoids us having to solicit evaluations from people who are no longer on the school committee who might have moved on. So I just wanted to open that up for further discussion on this committee. I think that that's an important piece here, so we can start to look forward to the next steps in the process. But I also wanted to hear from Dr. McCall on that as well.
If you want me to start, sure. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I think that aligns well with what you had said the other night. I agree. It would probably be better if we have this, end sometime toward the end of June when we're switching over. So I'd much rather have people evaluating me who know me and who have kind of had the opportunity to work with me over the past year versus someone that's coming, on board new. So I'm all for this.
Yeah, I appreciate that input. Ken, Amy, Megan, do you have any concerns regarding that?
Not at all. I think I expressed that during the last big meeting. I just don't think it's good precedent to be evaluating someone that you have no history working with or really understand what's gone on during the year. So I think it's not only logical, but it's the ethical decision to make sure that this is done before the new committee comes through.
Right.
I agree.
I agree too.
So we'll move on. I want to come back to that just in a minute, but I do want to move on to the timing, or actually move on from the timing to the goals. So we had talked about this at full school committee as well, that looking at two options. One is we could rewrite goals and modify them at this point. I don't think that that's really prudent given the timing that we just talked about. I think the other option is to look at in the DESE rate rubric, they'll taking the option of made significant progress and evaluating that as the same weight as met. And I think we heard as a full committee on this the other night. There wasn't too many comments on it, but again, I'd like to hear from Dr. McCall on that and how he feels about that.
Yeah, so I was very, first and foremost, I was happy MASC put out this information around the FAQs and the timing and the goals and so forth. So that also works for me because again, as we look at some of these goals, there's no way I'm going to have them complete based upon the current situation that we're in and the fact that we left school when we did. So to me, that also works. I think it's a good compromise.
All right. And then I'll come back, like I said, I'll come back to the timing, but the other pieces of this document that I think are just more informational standards. So knowing that we know what the standards are. It talks about unfairness of making changes to goals or standards or indicators, but there may be a case for including evidence in the evaluation for the closures and how that would be handled. I think it's important for us as a school committee to talk about this, that the standards of instructional leadership, management, operations, family and community engagement, professional culture, those all come into play. But I think it's important as a school committee that we understand that those standards still apply. So I would kind of open it up to this floor to just, stress to the superintendent that I think it's extremely important that there's evidence provided for that in the evaluation process. And I think this will lead back to timing because I know you have a lot on your plate, and I want to make sure that there's ample time that you have to be able to furnish that evidence, because I think that's a critical component of a fair evaluation.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that this information and evidence about handling the closure for me is important. I know it's not something that was one of the original goals, but since we're not altering the goals, so we're accepting the fact that the goals were put in pause, I think getting information about the way it was handled, not that we don't know, but being presented with evidence and evaluating the superintendent's performance in that role should be an important part of the evaluation this year. I know it's basically what Matt just said, but I think it's important.
I would agree also that it's important, but I don't want it really to be the sole focus. Like, I think we
Right.
had a really strong, you know, goal for the school year underway, and I would like that to be kind of the focus of the evidence that's presented. Obviously, everything's kind of turned upside down and things change by the day. When we met last, the school was still possibly to be opened for, you know, the last month of the school year, and now it's not, and things continue to develop. So as a school committee member, I would really appreciate the bulk of my evidence to be from September to March, and then to have kind of maybe just like an overview of what's happened since the COVID closures.
Yeah, I agree with Meg. I think it's important to have, but I think it's not. I do, you know, we were really purposeful, I think, about structuring goals and laying out the foundation for multi-year goals or things that could progress. And so I just don't want to lose traction that we've made, I think, in terms of forward progress on those. So, but obviously you can't evaluate performance in a year and not talk about, like, you know, a generational crisis that has come about and how it was managed. So I think that it'll certainly be a piece of it, but, you know, hopefully not the only focus.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I definitely agree with all of the viewpoints expressed. I think that you don't want to dismiss the progress that's made towards it. And I think being part of the school committee for a few years, I think in part of this subcommittee, I think one of the things that has shown in a few evaluations was a desire for more evidence. And I think that it would be really beneficial to look at those goals up until the closure, and even after that, what evidence can be furnished to back those up, to Member Weeks' point. But I think it puts you in a much better position to have that to back up the evaluation. And not that it's been lacking, but I know in the past we've given some suggestions, like in the superintendent's report, to highlight these are pieces of evidence. And I don't know how diligent we've been with following that, so I don't know if we have that to look back at. So I would just, you know, make sure that we have a concerted effort to be able to provide the appropriate evidence for that.
And just to echo what Matt's saying, I think while it doesn't have to be a substantive, at least for me, just speaking for myself, part of the evaluation, I think that the effectiveness of the superintendent on the closure process should be backed with evidence. I don't think that evidence is going to be particularly hard for you to present to us, because it's some things that you've already created and collected. You know, the plans, the timeline, the feedback you're going to ask for next week. You know, the iterative process as it proceeds. It's not, we're not asking you, I think, to do it. I'm not asking you to do anything that you don't already possess or plan to do. I just think that the document we're presented should, in one place, have that evidence so that we can refer to it when we do our evaluation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this feedback fits into what we're talking about now with regard to evidence, but I would say what is it called? Example evidence for superintendent evaluation PDF that was shared. You know, I think as somebody who has, you know, expressed in my own evaluations the need for, I think, more evidence of depth of impact of your work to whatever the goal was, rather than just the product of the goal. I think that this sheet gives actually really good examples of evidence, you know, especially under professional culture and the engagement, where, you know, it references meeting agenda item analyses, feedback loops on meetings that were held. So I think it would just be really, I'd appreciate taking a look through that and seeing if you can align some of the evidence to those examples. That would be really helpful, I think, as we looked at it this year.
Is there anyone else? Okay.
Are you okay with that, Dr. McCall?
Yeah. Again, I think as Ken mentioned, the information that we're pulling together over the past 4 to 5 weeks is really, it kind of speaks for itself. But I'll pull it all together in a way that will kind of show maybe a chronology with how this whole thing kind of played out, and again, the survey information that I'll be getting from families and staff next week. So all of that can come into play in terms of that presentation. Again, some of the other ones, the other goals, they're going to have, they're definitely going to have some areas where we, and we can talk about this later, either continuing them into next year with the understanding that, maybe they were partially met, or whatever it was, whatever term we want to use. But I agree with you, Amy. I think these were really solid goals, and I feel as though we put a lot of time and energy into developing them, and I don't want to lose sight of them. So that's an important part of, I think, this entire process as well.
And we I'm sorry, Matt.
No, go ahead.
I think that we would continue and tweak the goals, because I think some of the goals are going to be different in a new world, particularly new fiscal world where we're going to find ourselves. So, the framework of the top line might be the same, but a lot of the underlying lines are going to unfortunately have to be different.
That's right. And I think the situation we're in, we want to be fair about it, right? You want to be fair about it. You don't want to just say, hey, I met this goal and check it off if it hasn't been met and puts us in a position to take advantage of the success of that goal, right? So it's very fair that if there are elements that still need work because of the situation, to point those out, because although the evaluation happens yearly, we're looking at a 5-year plan of the district and moving it forward. So we have to always keep that in mind as well.
And I would also, highlight some successes, or even places that have been challenging in kind of moving your district leadership team. I know that was something that was important to a lot of the goals and a lot of things you're working on this year. Moving that to like an online forum, if that's been successful for you guys moving forward, what you have done to kind of tweak those meetings and kind of make them more impactful, and how they might differ from face-to-face. And I know just from my own experience, some of these meetings have been actually better held online, and some of these meetings have been a lot worse. So I think if you could speak to how that change has kind of come to be, and things that you've seen, I think the committee would appreciate that as well.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, Megan.
Really good point. All right, so knowing that we've kind of checked the boxes off on these pieces, and it seems like we have a path forward, I think it's important now to talk about, perhaps at end of June, or sometime the latter part of June, of this committee having done all the work, where Ken, as chair of the school committee, would probably put together that composite review and present that. That's the end goal that we're looking at. So from the time point now till then, I think it would be reasonable to look at end of May, 1st of June, to have that evidence, and and I want to make sure that you're okay with that. I think that gives us close to 6 weeks, a little over 5 weeks of time to do that. Will that work for you? I'm seeing a nod.
Yeah, I was just looking at the calendar. That works fine.
So I think the next step is, as a committee, we're going to have to work with Barry to make sure that we have the electronic form up to date to be able to have the individual members do the evaluation. So probably sometime on or around when Dr. McCall submits his evidence to us. But my hope would be that we'd have an opportunity as a full school committee to present that template in advance and say, here's what the evaluation is going to look like, a few reminders that if significant progress means this, and just a few things on completing that to encourage people to not only to complete it, but to complete it in a manner that's consistent with the rubric and looks at the evidence. And I think from that meeting, it would make sense to give the committee a week or so to complete their evaluations. And what we've done in the past as a subcommittee is broken out each element to an individual, so there's no collaboration. We'll compile them and then meet as a subcommittee, talk to those, give Ken the download, and then he puts together the composite evaluation. So I think we need one full school committee meeting to present it, one before, one after that to actually present the results of it, and probably a couple follow-on meetings to this. One to just go over with Barry to make sure that we have that set up in a proper manner. The other is to make sure that we're looking at the right indicators and that we're aggregating and moving the ball forward. But outside of that, I'm not sure if there are any other things we need to really do in the next month outside of make sure that Barry's equipped with the right information to be able to modify that template. That makes sense?
Yeah, Matt, I totally agree. I think that's a really nice timeline. And I think this form actually will give us a nice opportunity to screen share when we do have, the template put together so people can see it and kind of toggle through as we're talking. So I would agree with that time frame.
One thing I would say is I think it would be pertinent when we are presenting that, figuring out how we want to present that and perhaps having a subcommittee meeting to kind of go over that. I think it's important not to just show up at the meeting and say, here it is, that we prep for it. And I'm happy to do the preparation for it and even, be able to make sure we're on the same page.
That's totally fine by me. I'm happy to meet whenever you need to.
Okay. So I think the next step is, Ken, I'm going to probably reach out to you and Rebecca because I think this needs to coordinate with the full school committee meeting and just make sure that it makes sense from a logistical perspective on the timing. And I think once we coordinate that, everyone here can expect an email with kind of next steps. And Barry, I'll make sure that I'm in communication with Rebecca or directly to you to make sure that we're just keeping the ball moving forward. It's my understanding we have a lot of what we've done in the past, so it's really updating that, which is good, I think.
Yeah. Do you want me to share like the old link from last year's?
Yeah, I think that would help.
Okay.
And if you could give it to Rebecca and have her share it out to the members of the subcommittee, that would work.
Okay.
So I think that I hope closes the item on the agenda to that second item. Now the next item on the agenda, Megan, this is to talk about the materials we never talked about that you had gotten from the MASC conference.
Yeah.
I don't want to downplay those, but I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to talk about them or if we kind of table that and say, you know what, when we're talking about next year, maybe it is.
I mean, I can give you the most brief synopsis.
Sure.
Is that they want to do what we're doing already. So they really kind of suggested at the conference that the less is more option is really kind of where they want to go in general. So for committees to really, to pick power standards and power indicators and to really focus on those rather than, I think there's actually a lot of school committees out there that actually still go indicator by indicator by indicator by indicator all the way through, and expect superintendents to provide evidence for every single little bullet within there. And that's just the way they do it. And I think MASC has realized that this is just not an optimal model of, of supervision for the school committee or for the superintendent in question. So they're really just asking places to really condense those standards. So I think we're actually ahead of the game in that aspect. I'm happy to put together like a more, robust presentation for our next meeting or even for next year. But the guidance that they're going through is that what they put together, and it's just not just for superintendents, it's for principals and teachers, that it's just too broad for anybody really to truly look at in one school year, and they want to kind of condense the model.
Amy, you look like you're about to say something now.
No, just saying we're pioneers.
Yes. Love it.
And actually, a lot of districts don't have this subcommittee, so this is in another place that we're really ahead in. That they're still doing this as like nobody's really as big as we are, but to have 10 or 12 or 13 members kind of go through this process is a lot. So for us to have a subcommittee on superintendent evaluation is another thing that they've been recommending that we're already doing.
I think for regional school districts in particular, it's very important. A lot of school districts have 5 members, so all the work is done at a school committee meeting. So there aren't subcommittees in the same way that we have. So it makes complete sense to have the capacity to work like this in a smaller group.
It's good to hear when we're ahead of the game. Let's continue moving the ball forward, though. I think it's been for somebody who sat before this subcommittee existed. We don't have to rehash what it was like, but I felt lost during the evaluation process, just at a big table without really having direction. It was like 22 people trying to do things on their own, rowing a boat in all different directions, right? And I think we've seen it with the attendance of the responsiveness, right? I think before we saw the subcommittee, we were a hair over, one member over 50% of completing an evaluation. And if I recall last year, it might have been everyone, or one member did not complete it and due to health reasons. So I think it was, it says a lot when we can make it more direct. I don't want to say easier, but just more direct, that people know how to know what they're evaluating.
It's also easier with the like Google Forms model that we put forward a couple of years ago. So
100%.
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And everybody should know how to use Google Forms, Google Meets, even though I now figured out how to share, Barry. But I'm a master of Zoom, so if the Zoom ever calls you back, I can hook you up with Zoom. So Megan, I think that's important. I think if you want to put that together, I think it is something that I'll tell Rebecca, let's keep it on the agenda as we talk about the process of the evaluation. I don't think it's going to impact anything probably in the next 6 weeks or so of activity, but we're going to move quickly into probably a different cycle of goals, as Ken mentioned, and they're probably going to look different. And it's going to be important for us to have that at our fingertips as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. So I want to move to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment. And it looks like, I think there's at least one member of the public here, unless Mary is violating the social distancing and has a room full of people that
No, it's interesting. It's a big learning curve being in the virtual world. I think the coolest picture, I got a picture from one of the parents with their 2 children working and my face on the computer, and I just wanted to say, look, Mom, I'm on TV. So it was a touching moment to feel like I was teaching on someone's kitchen table. But yeah, it's hard, but it forces you to really think. I'm trying to connect all my lessons to the classroom, so I'm going back to a lot of what's going on in the classroom so that it's personal. I don't want to just put a lesson together that doesn't connect to where they are at any moment. So it's really, really good. So anyways, but I think teacher evaluations are kind of just gone to the side. So Daryl, your evaluation's still going on.
Mary, I'll do your eval for you.
Okay, thanks, Daryl.
I'll talk to Dix. Don't worry. But you know what? Thank you for sharing that about the picture. I've had people share different things with me over the past couple of weeks, and it's amazing. A lot of nice emails from parents just reaching out saying, you know, what a great job the staff are doing and all the buildings. So it's very much appreciated, and it's good to see your face, Mary.
Thank you. Yours also. And I think the last thing for me as an art teacher, I don't always speak to the parents. So being able to communicate directly to parents, it's been very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
Point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And also, if we can get to Zoom, I can have that Wachusett logo that I have in Zoom that I prepped, and I realized, oh, it's no use for my Holy Cross meetings. I have my lab, I have the building, I have the big tower on campus that I can switch behind me, but the Wachusett one's gotten no use yet.
That's too bad. I got bad father of the day or bad parent of the day award today because I had a 3-hour demo for work starting at 11 in the morning, and I had 22 people from a customer site on it, and I use Zoom, and my daughter had a Zoom meeting at 11 in the morning, and I said, you are not using the internet, you're not taking dad's bandwidth. I had to explain to her how bills get paid, and I felt like a bad dad. Like, you cannot access it. Sorry, but there's no way you're bringing down the house. Like, can't. Not that it would, but Zoom is having a lot. I've used Zoom professionally for 6 months or so, and they're just bursting at the seams, and there's so much performance. There's so many performance issues now, and it's good and it's bad.
Yeah, I had my 8-year-old doing a tutorial to another 8-year-old on Zoom today. Like, this is how you tell someone they are the host. This is how you change their name. So you can change your brother's name to "I have stinky feet." And so we had a long lesson today on Zoom etiquette.
Yeah, there's a lot of risks involved too, because anybody could share a computer, and we could go on about this. I could start sharing my screen, and my older sibling could have something inappropriate on it. And who holds that liability? Is it the person sharing it, or is there everybody who witnessed it, right?
Like, so in the district that I work in, we've shut down all capability, so only the host of the meeting can do anything, and so the people in the meeting cannot do anything.
Yeah, that's how we have it, and most of our meetings are recorded too. So you have to ask people beforehand. Does anyone object to it? And
Yeah, so
and
it's as an assistant principal, we had a kid vaping on Zoom last week. And so what do? You're not in school, right? So I can't suspend them. So I had to call the mom, who's actually a nurse at a hospital during this time, and let her know what her son did. And the mom just starts crying. And I'm like, I'm sorry, don't want to trouble you, but I have to tell you what happened. So it's hard.
That's the other liability, right? Teachers are mandated reporters, right? So there's the whole. I mean, we could go on about this, and this is food for thought for next year's evaluation, right? The thing is, this could be part of goals, because this could be a changing dynamics. I'm glad we're at least talking about this right here. Cool. Well, I think I'd love to give people time back in their lives, unless we want to stay on. I don't get to see many people.
Fastest meeting ever.
I'm missing bedtime, so if we want to keep talking, that's okay with me.
Well,
Hey, Daryl and Ken, I have a calendar idea that you guys can put your heads together and see. Can we put on our future agenda to get Marathon Monday off in September?
Yes.
It's going to be a state holiday. We might have no choice.
And I
will. Oh, are they going to make it a state holiday?
We think so. Yeah. Oh, you're gonna.
Oh, that would be better.
Yeah. When the commissioner spoke to us the other day, we had all kind of asked him about that, and they're leaning in that direction. So we're probably going to have to modify the calendar.
I don't know where I was reading about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to do that. That would be ridiculous.
You guys missed the world's most elite marathon ever on Monday, just to let you know. The Snoopy Dogg Princeton Yellow Marathon was held with a field of 10, and I ran 26.2 in Princeton, and PR'd at a 3:24, so I had a good day. But
oh my God, half of Princeton is uphill. How did you even
dropped off at the top of the mountain and just ran down?
Yeah, I wish.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does that help at all? Did you record that? Because I know they're doing some virtual things, but are they doing that at all for a marathon trial?
It's super unofficial. So it was just 18 weeks of training. You can't just flush down the toilet. You had to do
Yeah.
something. So the kids were out, and my husband was out, and a couple friends were out, and went from like the Holden line around Comet Pond back to the town center, back out again, and made it happen.
I don't know how you do it. I've run 3 half marathons, and I've said if you ran more than that, you're insane.
I do have to show you guys the medal because we're down in the medal land anyway. Ready? The kids made it. It's a Snoopy medal. Snoopy marathon.
Oh.
So, it was a good day.
Nice.
That's
All
awesome.
right, great. So next time we need some delivery of goods. Like I can't find flour anywhere, so if we could just stop at a
You
couple.
need to come to Princeton, Matt. Monty's the Monty's Market in Princeton. They have everything.
Yeah, Rutland Marketplace just said they have flour. I'm hoping that Amazon delivers my order, but it's been on 3 straight teapot orders and doesn't arrive.
Wow.
I don't know. Everybody's at home baking stuff and
They are.
nothing to do.
Yeah, we
Yep.
need to use gluten-free flour, and there's plenty of that if you're willing to spend 5 to 10 times as much
Oh
for,
my
for
God.
flour. You can find it.
A lot of
If you get stuck, Matt, you can come to Holden. I have flour. Not that much, but I got some.
well, I can trade. I can trade. I can trade.
Oh,
Oh.
This is my gold, and this is my
Black market, huh?
retirement savings right here. And it stays here because when mail gets delivered, I go outside and spray it all down and have my quarantine area.
Yeah.
That's the world. That's the new order. So, Daryl, budget for next year, goals, like how are we going to disinfect every year? I mean, there's a lot of changes.
yeah, Daryl, you could
Yeah.
trade 3 of those for 20 rolls of toilet paper, and you'd be all set.
It's going to be a barter system, I think.
Mhm.
It
Well,
is.
you know what's amazing? We're already talking about coming back in September, what that might look like. How how will schools come back in? How are we going to disinfect door handles, lights, desks, bathrooms? Until there's some type of inoculation or vaccine, whatever we want to call it, this is going to be a kind of a slow move, I believe, for education just in general. But even keeping, and I think the other thing that some people forget about is, parents have to stay home with their kids. So they can't even go to work. So even if the economy opens up again and schools aren't open, you're still going to have a lot of people staying home.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, we need a motion to adjourn though before
So
we.
moved.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and so let's take a roll call. I have to go
Can
on
we
break.
just all raise our hands? Aye. Aye. Michalowski, yes.
Aye. Lavoy,
Okay.
aye.
Hi, Weeks.
All right. Well,
All right.
we'll see everybody soon. Thank you. It's good to
Great.
see
All right,
everyone.
Thank you.
thanks, Matt.
Good night.
Take care.
And thank you, Barry, for recording and being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Barry.
Daryl, can you hang on for just a second? I just had a management question. Once
Sure.
Barry is not recording.
Stop recording.